Guys, thanks for tuning in to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today is going to be a great episode with Joseph Graham of Graham's Guide Service out of Ruidoso, New Mexico. And this guy's an Ibex Nut. We're going to talk to him about Ibex, Oryx, elk, and bighorn sheep, both Rocky Mountain and desert. And he's going to break down the units that he works in, and he's going to talk about the animals and break down all of the sheep units. And it's a great episode, and I know you guys are going to enjoy it. I want a couple reminders. The New Mexico applications for big game are due March 22nd, so don't forget, March 22nd is the deadline for New Mexico. We've got Colorado coming up, and I've got a couple of Colorado podcast episodes. That deadline is April 4th. Make sure to put on your calendar the 22nd for New Mexico and April 4th for Colorado. I also want to remind you guys that March 21st, which is a Tuesday, Dar Colburn and myself will be doing a turkey hunting seminar at Calvary Church. There off of I-17 on the west side of the freeway, roughly about Cactus Road, I think between like Cactus and Bethany Home, somewhere down there, just west of I-17. It's at Calvary Church. They're also going to be raffling off a Gould's Turkey Hunt with us at Colburn and Scott Outfitters and gouldsturkeyhunt.com. $10 for a ticket. You don't have to be present to win. You can go to desertchristianarchers.org and you can actually buy the raffle tickets there. And if you're a turkey hunter, if you got a turkey tag, or if you just want to come and watch some good video, we're going to do a question and answer session as well. Make sure to show up down there. I believe the doors open at 6 p.m. So guys, I'd love to see you. If you're a podcast listener, I'll definitely want to shake your hand, look me up, and it's always great to get together with you guys. I want to also thank the sponsors of this podcast. GoHunt.com Insider is the title sponsor of this podcast. If you use the J Scott promo code when signing up, you get a $50 KUIU gift card. Also, KUIU.com, Jason Hairston and his crew at KUIU. We're going to have some great promotions that we're going to be announcing here soon. Phonescope.com, Cheston Davis out of Beaver, Utah. You get a 10% discount if you use the JScott16 promo code. And also the Optics Authority, Cody Nelson at the Outdoorsman's here in Phoenix, 1-800-291-8065. Also outdoorsmans.com. If you use the JScott promo code when you call in or when you go on the website, you're going to get a 10% discount. So guys, let's get right to this episode with Joseph Graham. Also want to remind you guys real fast, you can send me an email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. You can follow along our adventures on Instagram at jscottoutdoors. My associate Dar Colburn, D-A-R-R Colburn. On Instagram, our business Facebook page, J Scott Outdoors. You can also go on my website, jscottoutdoors.com. I'm actually started updating my blog there. It's under the news title. And we've got a few spots available for Gould's turkeys this 2017 season, and I'm also already booking for 2018. So if you need a Gould's to complete your Royal Slam, go to Gould's, that's Goulds, gouldsturkeyhunt.com. You can also send me an email. I'm happy to send you the information at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Thank you guys for your support. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Joseph Graham of Graham Guide Service out of Ruidoso, New Mexico. And I'm going to be talking to Joseph about Ibex, Oryx, elk, and sheep. We've got a March 22nd deadline coming up, I believe, here in New Mexico. And there is still time to apply. You can also apply in the guided pool, which I'm going to be talking with Joseph about, and he's going to tell us all about Ibex, Oryx, elk, and sheep there. And Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm anxious to I've been looking here on your website, and it looks like you're just an avid hunter yourself, as well as guiding. But it looks like as much, whenever you can get out yourself and hunt, you do so. I want to give you a chance to kind of tell the listeners how you got started. Where you from, where were you raised, your kind of your start in hunting, and how that led you to being a guide there in New Mexico.
Well, I mean, I was born and raised right here in Ruidoso. Grew up right here, graduated here, and landed a job with the power company as a lineman, and have done that for 23 years now. But as far as that, my bread and butter, that's pretty much how I got to where I'm at today. But I started, all my uncles got me really going into the hunting. They were big time elk hunters back in the day, and kind of brought me up. I didn't really know any different because that's how they brought me up, was hunting elk, calling bulls. And so had a guy that started an outfitting business here, 20 years ago, and they were talking to my uncles about, we're trying to get them to guide for them, and they're like, nah, you don't need it, you don't want us, you want to get my nephew. So that kind of got it kicked off, and I guided for an outfit here for 13 years, and then they sold out, and I decided to start my own business. And so I did that, and it started off slow, but it's just been going gangbusters the last 3 years, and it's just been crazy, a whirlwind, to be honest with you, because I'm still doing a full-time job and doing a outfitting business at the same time.
Sure, I know it can be a lot of work. I get this question a lot, almost weekly, from young guys that listen to the podcast or follow me on Instagram and follow my own outfitting career and such. And they always ask, it's the same question: how do you start, and how do you become successful at being an outfitter and a guide? And I'm just going to ask you the question so you can tell them your version of that, the answer.
Well, I guess for me, it's just a passion of hunting, and then you just get going, and you just can't get enough. And having people that understand your passion and allow you to pursue those dreams, that's huge. I mean, you get a lot of guys that run into the married life, or girlfriends that have difficulty trying to explain and understand it. And some of us are very fortunate that our spouses and girlfriends and whatnot just understand that this is who we are. And just having the drive for something like that, and just you don't see anything else. I'm not going to say it's like having blinders on, but we're just nuts over it. I mean, it's kind of like people wonder what's wrong with me and why I love the Ibex so much, and it's just because it's just a challenge. I don't care who you are, where you come from. It's a challenge. I mean, the mountain's brutal. It's a big rock pile, and I don't know. I think my wires are crossed because I just eat it up and love it. And
The
just
more
going down and
torture,
watching those things.
the more torture it involves, the better you like it.
I think so. Sometimes I've been on some backpack hunts for myself. I go on guided hunts myself in other places, and I will sometimes think to myself, what have I got myself into?
Yeah. Yeah, let's dive right into the Ibex hunts. And I noticed that not only do you guide these hunts, but you pursue this tag, and I believe you've shot Ibex as well.
I have, Jay. I've been very fortunate over the years. I've had 2 muzzleloader tags and 2 archery tags myself, and I've killed 4 Ibex. My first muzzleloader tag was back in '04, and I shot a 47-inch billy that was #1 in the world for a little while. Then I decided I'd do the archery thing, and got real serious with it, and spent 7 days on the mountain just living up there. And one night had to tie myself to a tree. The wind was just screaming. Me and a buddy of mine were living up on top of the hill, and the wind was just howling up there. And so I wound up tying myself to a tree and got back in my tent because I knew I'd at least have a fighting chance if I had a rope tied to me. But finally got an Ibex with a bow. And then after that, obviously after I killed the big one with the muzzleloader, it became a major passion. But after I killed one with a bow, it's like, wow. They say that this is a 3 to 5% success rate on archery, and here I am just completed that, and had another buddy that was with me, and he got one. We actually wound up killing two the same day within probably 3 or 4 hours of each other. And then I pursued it again, got another Ibex, practiced out at the longer distances, and had myself where I was proficient at 100 yards, and was shooting all the way out to 130. And the angles and the wind and everything else plays a huge factor in that. But wound up killing my second Ibex with a bow at 120 yards, and then was fortunate enough a few years ago to draw another muzzleloader tag, and got a really nice billy on the second day. But been guiding Ibex down there for a while, taking quite a few really nice ones with rifles and muzzleloaders. Right now we're running 100% success rate on rifle and muzzleloader. I had a gentleman a few years ago that was 72 that drew the rifle tag, and wound up getting him a really nice billy on the first day.
That's so fantastic.
You get some guys that they call and ask me, well, I'm 65 years old. Is this for me? And I said, well, we just need to sit and visit about it. And if you are physically fit to do the task and you've got the heart, we'll work with you. We'll do whatever we can to make sure that we're not pushing you past your limits or what we need to do to make it happen. But, everybody's got a different style of life. And so if guys want to get out and get in shape, I don't know that, age truly matters, because we're not going to push you past your limits.
That's awesome. Joseph, I got a question for you. Where did these Ibex come from, and are they considered Bezors, or what are these Ibex?
Yeah, they were brought in back in the 70s. The actual cages, the wooden crates where they flew them in with a helicopter, still on top of the mountain. And they were brought in, and it's my understanding that they were given to the governor of New Mexico as a present from Iran, and introduced here, and they call them the Bezor Persian Ibex, and they're a full-blood string of that Ibex.
Okay. And these are in the Florida mountains, which are, tell everyone where the Floridas are located geographically in relation to maybe some towns or what have you, so they can kind of put it all together.
Well, you've got the main mountain, which is called the Floridas, and it's straight south of Deming, New Mexico, right off Interstate 10, which the mountain range going towards Columbus. The main mountain range runs north and south as far as, because the mountains, it's kind of long and skinny, basically, because it's 9.5 miles long and about 6 miles wide. It's almost built into a T, if you will. I'm going to say it's like 10, 15 miles from the Mexican border. But it's basically straight south of Deming, and then you've got what they call the Little Floridas, which is included in that Unit 25. It's a smaller portion of the mountain. Majority, 99.9% of the Ibex are on the Floridas. Every now and then you'll get some that get kicked off, bumped off, when they do their qualifying hunts, where they'll try to reduce the herd. The biggest problem that we're having is the Game and Fish have an agreement with the state of the BLM to only keep like 400 to 600 Ibex on the mountain range, and there's points and times where we're getting 900 to 1,000 Ibex on the mountain, and they've got to do something about it. So they've incorporated these management hunts, and so at those point in times is where you'll kick a few off that might want to get off of that mountain and cross that desert floor, because realistically you're talking, man, the closest mountains to that are the Tres Hermanos down right on the Mexican border there, and you're talking, I bet as a crow flies, I bet it's 3 or 4 miles across the desert floor to get to that mountain range. So there have been a few killed in that mountain range, but I've had guys ask me, well, what do you think about the offerings tag? And I said, well, how much time do you have? Because we're going to have to sit down there for a month or two to even see one. it's just realistically, I mean, you got guys that live right there in that dimming area that go down every weekend and glass that mountain just looking for one, because it's a, it's an over-the-counter off-range tag. So those guys that live right there are going to go and pursue that, where most of us that don't live right there in dimming aren't going to.
It makes sense. How do they break down those Ibex hunts?
Well, right now the way the structure is the very first hunt of the year is the way I call it, because when I talk about a year, it's not January 1, it's what I consider the April 1st is how the game and fish, that's their year, April 1st to March 31st. So the very first hunt of the year is the first archery hunt, October 1st. That's what I consider to be the better of the two archery hunts, and just because they haven't been chased for like 6 months. Okay, so they're pretty. I'm not going to tell you that they're calm, because an ibex is afraid of his own shadow. They're just that weary. The nannies that run around with them are always sitting up above the whole herd. You'll always have one, what we call sentry nannies, that's up above everybody, and she's going to alert the whole herd of anything. But literally, there's somebody's watching you at all times. It's very, very, very difficult to get close to them. But that October hunt seems to be a little bit better, just because they haven't been chased. Then you go right into the once in a lifetime rifle hunt, which is the middle of November when they're rutting. I'm not going to say that it's cheating, but it's a lot of fun to go out there during that rifle hunt, because they're rutting, they're chasing each other, they're making noise, they're being stupid. And I'll be honest with you. They're still weary, but it's nothing like anything you'll ever experience any other time of the year whenever they're mating. Then after the once in a lifetime hunt, you've got your muzzleloader hunt, which starts like the first weekend in December, and that runs for a couple of weeks. And then you got your youth hunt that starts the day after Christmas. They structured that. It used to be in September, but they've restructured it for those kids to be able to hunt on their Christmas break. And so they get to hunt from December 27th to like January 10th. And then after that, you've got your second rifle hunt, or your second archery hunt, which is starts around January 15th or 16th. And that's when it's a little bit more difficult. And that's why I was saying and explaining that the first bow hunt is easier, a little bit easier, I guess I should say, to do, just because you can kind of see how I've laid the scenario out. They've been chased for 3 months with rifles, and now you got to go try to kill one with a bow. So it's a little bit more difficult in January.
I've heard the October 1st through the 15th hunt is a rattlesnake infested sucker up there on that mountain. Is that true?
Well,
and let's hear some stories.
I'm not gonna lie about it. It can be. You just got to be careful. I mean, it's like anything else. Of all of us guys that hunt in the West, you just got to be careful. You got to be paying attention as to what's going on. It's definitely hotter, and it's definitely got the snakes. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, last year I was guiding a guy, and we wound up getting. We had 2 bow hunters over there last year, and we wound up getting. My hunter killed one on the first day, and we were helping the other guy out, because I run my operation with 2 guides per hunter. You always have a spotter helping you out with your situation, keeping an eye on the ibex. But I stepped out of the pickup when we were going to meet back up that evening, and there was a rattlesnake right there in the road. So yeah, I'm not going to lie about it. There's definitely snakes.
When you're up in the actual rocks and stalking and stuff, like actually up in the rocks, is it pretty bad, or is it mainly just kind of in the vegetation and kind of in the lower country as you're walking the ridges getting up to where you're going?
That's right. I mean, yeah, that's where you're going to encounter most of your snakes, is down in the foothills, the flatter stuff, and the foothills just getting up to where you're working in. Because, I mean, that mountain does get some rain and it does get some grass on it, but most of that stuff is down, like you say, on those foothill ridges. Getting up into there is where you're going to encounter most all your snakes. I mean, once you get up high, you'll see a few, but it's very few.
How do you determine a trophy ibex like what are some of the things that you're looking for, characteristics and what have you, when you're trying to figure out if it's a good one or not?
Well, the Ibex have two different characteristics of horn configurations. One of them is what we call a wagon wheel billy, and his horns is exactly the way it's called. I mean, the horns are wagon wheel. They loop around, and so when you're looking at that billy, you're looking at the stripe on his shoulder. How far does his curl come back behind that stripe when his head is standing in a certain position, not stretched out feeding, not turning, looking, just basically standing there. Where is that end of that wagon wheel coming around, and how much is turning up? I mean, it's a lot like judging sheep. You've got to look at them at a couple of different angles to even know whether you're going to pursue that animal with a rifle or a muzzleloader. Now with a bow, any Ibex billy is a good one with a bow, and everybody always says any Ibex with a bow is a good one, but we try to say that any billy with a bow is a good one. And then we got what you call a straight horn billy, which is horns are still going to curve, but they're not gonna turn quite so hard. And we killed one with a rifle hunter one year that was a 48-inch billy that was straight horned, and he looks like a giant just because of how far his horns come back. I mean, I could almost scratch his butt with them. They just come almost straight back, and it was just a really beautiful, beautiful Ibex.
I'm looking here on Graham's Guide Services .com in your photo album here of the Ibex, and it's interesting to definitely see there, distinctly two different types of horn configurations. In your opinion, like what's your favorite? Do you like the wagon wheel or do you like them more straight if you had to choose?
Man, that's gonna just depend. Sometimes those straight horn billies will get a wide flare to them at the top, and they're just awesome looking. Or you can get one. Oh, we were guiding a youth hunter down there one year, and I was watching a billy on the side of this hill that I was glassing, and I finally picked up this one billy, and he was a giant, and it made my heart race. And he was a wagon wheel billy. His horns come up, and then the tip started turning out. It was just an amazing creature to sit and watch. It actually made my heart race just to sit there and look at him through a spot and scope. It was kind of a neat situation to be in. But, those Ibex, they'll walk up to a rock and start beating the crap out of their horns, trying to break them off. Because if you think about these horns on these, they're a goat. So it's not like they're a big animal. They're a small animal, and they've got these huge horns. And they can run across a sheer-faced wall, and they'll catch those horns. So they don't like those horns, being on their head, to be honest with you. So you'll see them beating them on a rock, and you'll find, Ibex that are got some of them broke off, some of them halfway, some of them we've seen that just have two nubs sticking up because they want to get rid of them just like anybody else because it messes up. We've watched them run with their head kind of kicked out, and they know it's no different than a bull elk running through the timber. He knows what he's got on his head and how he's got to get it through there. And the Ibex are the same way. I describe an Ibex to hunters as you can turn it loose in your house and they can run on the spackling on the wall.
The first question I would have for you is, what does a mature billy weigh?
I'm going to say that you're probably looking at about 110, maybe 120.
How about a mature, is it a nanny? A mature nanny?
Yeah, geez, she's not going to go over 50, 60 pounds.
Okay. 50, 60.
They're small. And yeah, I had a guy call me the other day. He was down on that nanny hunting. He said, Joseph, I can't find one. He says, I've been down here for 2 days glassing and I can't find an Ibex. So I told him where to go, what to do. He called me back. He said, I owe you one. I know what they look like now.
And the nannies have horns as well?
They do. They've got small little horns.
Okay.
Yep. I've been very fortunate. We've had quite a few guys that we've guided as Graham's Guide Service, but I've personally guided 7 guys and killed 6 Ibex with a bow, and the furthest one as far as me guiding and killed was 89 yards, and the closest was 3 yards.
Wow. Do you ever get Ibex where that just the anomaly where they'll let you walk up to them and more docile like sheep, or are they all just wild as they can be?
No, you're not walking up on an ibex. Let me rephrase that. I've walked up on a nanny in a cave, and she laid her head down on the rock and had her head laid down and just sitting there basically saying, well, you can't see me.
Gotcha. And they live in the rocks, right? The roughest, to the place that the sheep won't even live, like the steepest, nastiest rocks. And is that correct? And what are their hooves? I assume their hooves are soft and pliable.
Oh yeah, yeah. Their hooves are very soft. I think they got suction cups in them somehow. I'm not quite sure how they do what they do because you'll see them up there on the side of a sheer face cliff, and they're stretched out between two rocks and they're on three legs basically reaching out there, either getting some what I consider salt out of the rocks or nibbling on a little bit of green something, and you just have to go down and see the things to understand or even believe what we talk about when we talk about ibex. As far as they spend the nights on the sheerest, nastiest, straight up and down stuff you can find. They live on the domes. They live on the faces at night because that's their only method of protection from the mountain lions, because they've got mountain lions that are turned loose down there on that mountain. And we've run into and seen a few, but there are mountain lions down there, and that's the only thing that... Hello?
Yep, I got you.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My phone vibrated, so...
No problem. So a good rule of thumb is that if you can, in the mornings at first light, be glassing those domes and those steep areas of sheer rock, that's where you feel like you're gonna at first light pick up more of your ibex, because they're doing that as a defense mechanism, so a predator can't crawl out on the rock with them. So they want those like sheer faces that the bobcat and the lion can't, and the coyote, I guess, can't get out to. Correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, first light, and it's funny because sometimes you'll be glassing and they'll stay on those domes and the flat faces till the sun comes up, and sometimes as soon as you can see and they can see, they're going to come off. And 90% of the time they won't retreat back to the domes or the cliffs unless they've really been pressured hard. They're going to keep running around and eating, and sometimes you get up on the mountain and you'll be pushing them, and you get other hunters pushing them, and you look down and they're plumb down by the pickup, and you're like, "Are you kidding me?"
So they will get down in the flats at times. They'll get down in lower areas.
Not necessarily all the way in the flats, but they'll get right at the edge of it in the foothills. Yeah, just getting away from us. It happens all the time. All the time. You're like up on top of the mountain and you look down and you're like, man, I wish I was standing at the truck right now. Because nobody's down at the bottom. Everybody's on top.
When you're hunting these ibex, is it best to approach from above or below? What's usually your general rule of thumb?
Man, you just want to approach downwind of any sort. You want to keep your wind right. You want to keep yourself hidden. Probably from above. If I had to say one approach method, you're going to want to try to come in above them, because most of the time they're looking down. But obviously, I took a guy one time on top of a dome, and we had him right below us. And I mean, as soon as he I told him draw his bow back and peek over. I said they're right there, and he drew his bow back. And as soon as they saw that bow come over, I mean, they scattered like quail and were gone. And we came in above them. So who knows? But the biggest thing is staying hidden and not letting them see your movement, because they are seriously a dang butterfly will scare them.
How well, compared to mule deer, compared to coos deer, compared to elk, some of that kind of stuff, how far out, how good eyesight do they have compared to those animals?
Whew, I'm going to say they're going to be somewhere equivalent to an antelope.
So in other words,
I mean,
you got to stay out of sight. I mean, if they see you at 700, 800, 900 yards, they're gone. They're moving, getting away from you.
There's that possibility, yes. I can also tell you that they somehow know who's hunting and who's not hunting, and whether it's bow season or rifle season, because we have had guys up on the mountain and the ibex come down and we go to push them back up the hill, and the guy pushing is like 50, 60, 70 yards from them, and they're just sitting there looking at him. Yeah. And it's like, are you kidding me? You know, you'd run into those scenarios every now and again. Like, really?
Yeah. Wow.
It just happens.
I'm looking at the Go Hunt Insider, looking at the draw odds, and it looks like last year on that rifle hunt, which you said was, the premier hunt of the whole deal because they're running November 15th to the November 29th. There were 3 tags that were offered in the guided pool. There was 875 apps, so it puts the odds at 1.7%. But my question is, if people apply with you in the guided draw year after year, have you seen it where their odds are better than if they just draw in the regular non-resident, pool?
Well, I mean, obviously, yes, their odds are almost double better to go with an outfitter and be in that outfitter pool, because, a lot of guys don't want to spend the money to go with an outfitter. There's a lot of guys out there of do-it-yourself type hunters that, they're just not gonna do it. They've got the time, or they want to make the time to go scout and do it on their own. So I think, we're getting a few guys, new guys every year that want to apply with us, but we're not flooding the market, I guess you should say, in that outfitter pool. We're putting quite a few people in, but we're not flooding that market. But I would say that it's definitely better because, on the non-resident unguided, there's probably 1 tag versus 3. So
yeah, I'm also looking at like the the archery. There were 36 apps for 10 tags total in the October 1st to the October 15th hunt for archery. So obviously that early archery season is percentage-wise your best option to draw a tag. But it's also, like you said, it's you like that hunt, but there's a lot to it, correct?
Yeah, and it's like I referred to in the beginning. The reason I like it is just because they haven't been messed with for 6 months. And I'm not going to say that it's any easier. It's just a little bit different. They're not standing there looking in every direction, freaking out, trying to figure out who's coming after them, who's chasing them, where's the next bullet coming from. They're just a little bit different acting in that October hunt. Plus, it's warmer. Yeah. They're not going to just keep running around because obviously they're an animal and they don't want to overheat either. So, yeah. They just act a little bit different in that hunt.
Would you say, and then we're going to move on to Oryx, would you say the Ibex, out of all the animals that you hunt and guide, is it your favorite?
Yes, by far.
Okay, so you're just an Ibex nut.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah, I just love them. I mean, I just love the dang things.
Sounds good. Let's move on and talk about Oryx and explain to the listener what an Oryx is, and then a little bit about the hunts and your experience with those Oryx hunts.
Well, the Oryx is what we call the Oryx. His African name is Gemsbok. Was the same thing, was brought in back in the 60s, 70s. I'm not exactly sure when they were brought into the White Sands Missile Range down here. And right now we've got basically 3 different areas that we can hunt. One is the McGregor Range, which is not a once-in-a-lifetime hunt. We have the Rhodes Canyon, which is a once-in-a-lifetime hunt, and the Stallion Range, which is a once-in-a-lifetime hunt. They offer some broken horn hunts that are not once-in-a-lifetime, and some off-range tags, which, it's not as easy off-range to get an Oryx as it used to be. You can still get one, but, they're running basically a hunt every month with probably 60 tags for off-range public land, and it's a little bit more difficult to draw, but the premier hunts on the Missile Range are still phenomenal. They've hunted them pretty hard. Obviously the same thing. They were starting to get out of that Missile Range and scatter quite a bit. They've got scattered basically from El Paso, Texas, all the way up to dang near Albuquerque. So that gives you a slight idea of how far these things have traveled. I don't know how many of them have wound up down in that Texas country, but I know there's some. I've seen one on the side of the road as soon as I come out of Texas, right there, coming from El Paso, headed this direction. One night, one standing on the side of the road, so they've scattered a long ways.
Those hunts, don't you have to meet at the White Sands Missile Range headquarters, and you have to go through a little class or what have you, and then it's fairly regulated, is it not?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, if you draw that tag, you've got to turn in all of your paperwork and everything in advance because they're doing background checks on you. They're going to find out how many kids you got and who your parents are and everything. They're going to do full screen. They do the same thing with us. We have to have our paperwork turned in way early, like, the middle of July for, a September hunt because they're going to do background checks and screens on myself and all of my guides and everything. So when you do get that, then you show up at the orientation on, they usually start about 10 o'clock on Friday morning. You go out there to your orientation. They check everybody in. They run you through the orientation, tell you your do's and don'ts, obviously not to pick up anything, don't touch anything out there because they're what they call UXO, unexploded ordnances in certain spots. If you see anything that's man-made that looks funny, turn it in, mark it on your GPS and turn it in so they can go out and send a bomb squad to go look at it and whatnot. But they have some areas where they know and have noted that they are, and they're called closed areas. And they're inside, on your map, you'll see them marked out in red, which is, got all the little lines to it. Do not go in here, and they cone it off. When you're out there on that hunt, they'll cone that stuff off, and it's marked very well to let you know that you can't go out there, or seem to know where those areas are. For whatever reason, they know you can't go in there. But it's really the Oryx hunts are what I call a glorified antelope hunt. They're a lot of fun. They're really good to eat, and it's a hunt now. There was times back in in the 90s where there were so many of them. As more people just driving around and shooting one, and it's turned into a hunt. We get out there and we glass up some good ones, and the field judging on those is a little bit difficult. Just trying to make sure that you got to get the right one. You don't want to waste a once in a lifetime tag. And the 1-year-old Ibex, you got what they call brownies, which is the babies, and those are very obvious. Then you've got your 1-year-old Oryx, and they're a little bit smaller than the adults, but a little bit bigger than the brownies. But sometimes you'll get a group of 1-year-olds and not having an adult. They call them a sub-adult. Not having an adult with them. And we've seen guys go out there and shoot those not knowing what they're doing, and they wind up showing up at the check station, and it's still illegal Oryx, but they show up at the check station with a 26 or 28 inch Oryx, and they have no idea of what they've just done because they haven't been out there enough to truly know what they're looking for.
How much does body size play in? I would think it would be huge with field judging on Oryx. Just small bodies, horns look longer. Big bodies, horns are going to look shorter, smaller.
For the most part, your cows are, once they get to that 2-year-old plus, they're going to be about the same size. Most all your cows. Your bulls are going to be slightly bigger, not a lot. I mean, if you've got a whole herd of Oryx standing out there, you're going to see the base of the horns are a little bigger. Obviously, if you're looking at them with a spot and scope, the rings on the horns go up about 3/4 of the way up the horn, where on a cow, they go about 1/4 to half, maybe not even quite half. The necks are going to be bigger. They're going to be just a little bit bigger of an animal, but, the guy who doesn't look at them very often, you're looking out there, it's like, well, which one's a bull? He's not going to know.
So the general person that hasn't seen a lot, they're not going to tell the difference between a bull and a cow?
Yeah, depends on the distance. Yeah, absolutely. They could look at a herd of Oryx and not know the difference between a bull and a cow, at a given distance.
How wild are the Oryx?
And this kind of plays into the factor of the hunt that you can draw. I mean, obviously, the further into the year that they hunt roads Canyon three times. They hunt the stallion 3 times. So obviously by that third hunt, they're a little bit wilder. They've been chased and shot at, and so they're a little bit wilder on that third hunt. But they're still, they're still pretty wild. You're going to have to, be able to stalk out there and shoot some. I mean, most of the time we're telling guys to be prepared to shoot, 4, possibly 5 at the most. We don't want to, be flinging lead much over that. But, I took a guy in February and killed a really nice Oryx on the stallion, and we got in a ditch and worked our way down in, 189 yards. So you just play the terrain to your favor.
Do very many Oryx get killed with a bow, or is it pretty much a firearm game?
You'll have every now and again somebody shoot one with a bow, but it's primarily firearm game.
What caliber do you recommend for the Oryx?
Most of the time we want guys to be bringing a 7 mag or a 300 Win mag. Anything right around that caliber that's, something you're going to shoot an elk with, just because they're tough. They're a very tough animal. You got to shoot them through that front shoulder because, they're one of them African species where their vitals are kind of pushed forward inside their chest cavity. So, they'll tell you that in the orientation to shoot them right through the front shoulder to try to break them down. So, obviously we've seen them go down on various different shots, and you just want to bring a decent sized gun. You don't want to show up with a 243.
That's one question I didn't ask when we were on Ibex. What caliber do you recommend on Ibex?
Well, I'm just a 300 Win mag guy. That's my favorite gun. You can shoot anything from a coyote, to a moose with it, and so I'm just a 300 Win mag person. So if you're asking me, that's what I'm telling you to bring.
Understood. I'd like to transition here to talking about your elk hunts and living in Rio Doso. I would assume you hunt there in the Sacramento Mountains. What units do you hunt primarily there?
We try to stay focused on 36. We do a little bit in 34. I've got some guides that love 34, and they're all the time wanting me to put some guys in and draw over there. 34 is a different unit from 36. It's got a few more roads in it. It's not quite as steep in elevation. Obviously it is 9,000 feet at some of the points over there in 34, but you don't have the peaks and the steepness of what we have in some of 36. Now 36, basically 36 is on the north side of the Mescalero Apache Reservation, and 34 is on the south side of the Mescalero Apache Reservation. But 36, basically we can hunt from 9,000 to 11,000 feet. There is a peak right here that's on the reservation that's 12,000. But we can hunt all kinds of different country, from the rolling hills, pinyon, juniper, plumb up into the aspen meadows in the high country at 11,000 feet. So, we've got a wide variety. We got the guys that call us that are, fitness runners, and they want to go and they want to hike in and get back in there where nobody else is, and we can do that, or we can accommodate some of the guys that, maybe can't do quite that, and, they want to hunt some of the lower country, and there's bulls throughout the unit. A few years ago, we had a huge burn come through here and burn off a bunch of the wilderness and the forest, and it has created a huge amount of vegetation, and it's done very well for us as far as opening up some country for some longer rifle shots and the feed for the animals and putting on some good horns.
Did it burn on the Mescalero reservation as well, or was the fire limited to off of the reservation?
It burnt some of the res, but not very much.
So
it was in that higher country.
Did a bunch of those res elk, typically when there's new fresh burns, did you see an influx of elk come from the res into Unit 36, and has the hunting been better since the fire?
The hunting has definitely been better since the fire. Some of that area that burnt, which is on the res and the national forest, is some places that they don't even hunt when it comes to their tribal hunts and their package hunts and things like that. They typically don't even go up into that higher country. So obviously a bunch of those elk that were up in that higher country dispersed out into a bunch of that burn. But yeah, it's definitely been better the last 3 or 4 years. We've hunted it pretty good and killed some really nice bulls out of there.
I'm looking at these Go Hunt Insider draw odds on the September 1st through the 14th season, and it looks like there was 207 applications for 13 tags in the guided portion of the draw, putting the percentage at 9.3%. So that's a situation, that's pretty good draw odds for, sounds like pretty good quality. What can a guy expect that's in shape, that puts in for the Unit 36 hunt? What can he expect to kill? And I guess with that question, there's two seasons. There's the 1st to the 14th, and then there's the 15th to the 24th. How do those two seasons differ from quality standpoint, and how do those hunts differ from just an overall hunt?
Well, I get asked that question all the time about those two different hunts. The September 14th, 1st through the 14th, we generally run a 6-day hunt. We do it the 9th to the 14th. As far as the draw odds, yes, it's a little bit better. And people ask me, well, is this the other hunt that is the second hunt, is it better? And I say, well, it just depends. Sometimes we're able to do just as well, if not better, on that first hunt, obviously because the bigger bulls may have not started cowing up yet. The rut hadn't fully kicked into swing, and sometimes we're calling in pretty good bulls that haven't quite found a harem and haven't quite made up their mind yet what they're going to do for the next month. And, I called in a bull on that first season for a guy last year and scored 337. Called him right in, called him in on a string, and he was able to stick him. And so to say that one is better than the other, I don't know. It is a very unique unit because I get hunters that come out here and hunt with us, and they go to some of these other states and, pack in a horseback for 10 miles into the wilderness, and they hear two bugles and see one bull, and they come out here and hunt with us, and they're like, are you kidding me? This is like Jurassic Park elk hunting. You got elk coming and screaming in your face and slobbering, and it's just a very fun hunt. We're not killing those giant bulls like they do on the western side of the state. We have killed some good bulls in this unit, but it's not typical, and that's what I make sure that people understand whenever they call and talk to me. You've got to wade through some elk if you're willing to pass up, quite a few bulls. Then you can work your way into maybe doing a 340 or 350 bull, but that's just not typically what we're hunting. I tell guys we're killing bulls between 280 and 320 with a chance at something bigger. We're always killing a 340, a 350, a 360, or even bigger, at least one of those bulls every year. But they're just, you're not going to see a ton of those elk.
Sure.
You got to wade through a lot of smaller bulls to get to a bull like that. And I tell guys, if you're willing to pass up those, then we're willing to take you hunting and see if we can find something. But, I won't guarantee anybody they're going to see a 370 bull. It's just not something I'm going to do.
Sure. But as far as bugling and opportunity and having a great hunt and, a chaos type bugling hunt, Jurassic Park type, like action, it's definitely a great unit for that.
Well, I tell you, we had 18 bow hunters last year, and everybody but one guy flung an arrow.
Okay.
And it wasn't because he didn't have elk, in his face or all around him. Just everybody's got a different situation. But yeah, we put guys right in the middle of them, and I shouldn't even say this because people might expect it. And I've been guiding for over 20 years, and it was the first time it's ever happened to me. I took a guy out. We stayed out all day, and we pounded all day long, and I called in 12 bulls.
Wow.
And that's just, you think about it, I've been doing this for 20 years, and that's never happened before in my life, so it may never happen again, but it was a day I'll never forget.
That's awesome. And then the muzzleloader hunt, tell me about the timing of the season in 2017 and how that muzzleloader hunt typically goes, and is that a better hunt than the archery hunt, or is it kind of after the bugling? Tell me what, I believe the dates are the 7th through the 11th this coming year.
Yeah, it's funny because the Mexico Game and Fish always starts our muzzleloader and rifle hunts on a Saturday. So every year that hunt will get a day earlier until they decide to throw it back. So, obviously last year it was on the 8th. This year it'll be on the 7th. So I don't know exactly when they're going to throw it back. I've hunted that hunt as early as September 29th. I don't think they'll ever let it get that early again. But I have actually hunted muzzleloader September 29th. But we have, the elk are still screaming. For me, the peak of the rut around here is sometime between September 26th and September 28th. And so obviously it's on the downhill slide of the peak, but they're still screaming. You can still call the bulls in. We get excited when the muzzleloader season starts because all them big bulls that we were having trouble trying to get in on or couldn't get called in because of the herd or whatnot, we know where they're at, and we go out there and start hammering them with a muzzleloader. And so we like it. We had 10 guys last year and killed 8 bulls. The 2 guys that didn't kill bulls both shot bulls.
And kind of average, what kind of bulls general?
Well, most of those bulls, if we took all of them and threw them into a hat, you're going to come out with a 315 average.
315.
Yeah, some of them. I mean, I think the biggest one we shot on the muzzleloader hunt was like right around 330.
Okay. And then as you transition into the rifle hunts, I believe there's 2 rifle hunts, the 14th through the 18th and the 28th through the 1st. Tell me how those hunts differ from each other and, what your success is on both of those hunts.
Well, you think about that muzzleloader hunt starting on the 7th and going for 5 days. And then you've got 2 days break. You've got Thursday and Friday. And then we start rifle hunting. That first rifle hunt starts basically 2 days after the muzzleloader ends. And so they're still bugling. They're still screaming. So it's kind of the same thing. You just got a little bit longer range as far as your shooting. We run 100% on that hunt last year. Every single person that we guided killed a bull. Killed a beautiful I think it was 8x9 bull on that hunt. And then when you transition, you got a couple of week break. And then like this year, that second rifle hunt will start October 28th and go to November 1st. At that point in time, some of the guys that are fit and go hunt some of that higher country with my guides, they've run into bulls up there screaming still. You think about it, it's kind of crazy. The end of October, 1st of November, bulls still screaming, but it happens. But most of your bulls are starting to get away from the big bulls are starting to get away from the cows. They're going back. Some of them are even herding up with other bulls, but they've become more patternable. They're just trying to put food back on now. They've spent a month and a half, almost 2 months rutting, and they're tired, they're wore out, and they're ready to get back to their normal routine of hanging out with the boys and eating. And so they become a little bit more patternable, and sometimes we kill our biggest bull on that last rifle hunt just because of that reason.
Because they're retreating back to those areas and you kind of know where to go and where to find them in those canyons and such.
Yep, and they're a little bit more patternable, and you know when they're going to come out, where they're coming out. They're not going to get off with a bunch of cows and pushing them around, and another bull push them and run them off, and they don't know which canyon they're in anymore. They become very patternable.
Your hunts for elk, are they, camping type hunts, or are you staying in motels, or do you have cabins, or how do you do that?
Well, in 36, I have a lodge right next to my house that the hunters stay in. We have a cook. That cook provides meals at night. We do quick grab and go breakfast in the morning, and lunch. Most of the time you make something to take out with you if you're going to stay out all day. Sometimes you don't stay out all day because we hop in a truck and we drive to a trailhead, and everybody kind of scatters out, and you walk in and you either come back in. If you didn't go that far, you come back in and go rest your feet, get something to eat, kick your boots off, and go back out in the afternoons. Or sometimes, you chase some bulls and you wind up too far in and you just stay out all day. But that's typically how those run. We do one-on-one guide service. Every now and again, we'll put together a 2-on-1. Some guys just really want that, and we'll accommodate that. But most all of our prices are based on one-on-one guide service. We have the mules to get the elk out of the woods. We don't hunt off the mules. Everything's done on foot. And so in 36, that's pretty much how that's run. In 34, we've got a set of cabins that we rent and put the hunters up in there. And our cook over in 36 prepares the meals and freezes them and sends them over with the guides to just pull out and heat up for the evening.
Sounds like a good time. Do you guys, it's kind of off the subject, but I've hunted the Mescalero several times for turkey. Do you guys also have good spring turkey hunting there in 36?
We do. I don't offer it. We're actually taking a group this year. I don't offer it obviously because of with my job and things, but I've got some guides who are like, hey, we want to guide some turkeys, hunter, book some turkey hunters. So we're going to start offering it. But yeah, we've got some really good turkey hunting. And so we're going to start doing some of that. And obviously, my plan to retire in 7 years, hopefully we'll start offering some bear and mountain lion. I've got a guide that has dogs and runs cats, and we'll start offering quite a few other options, once I'm able to spread out a little bit more.
I know one of your other passions is sheep hunting, and I wanted to cover the sheep options for hunt for non-resident hunters there in New Mexico. I was wondering if you could go through both the desert and the Rocky Mountain and kind of give the pros and cons of each unit and some of your knowledge about those units.
Well, let's just start with the desert. I mean, the desert are in the southern half of the state of New Mexico, and I would say the southern and the western center, the center of New Mexico to the western part, basically in that quadrant. You've got 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 different mountain ranges that hold the desert. You've got the drones, which always produces a giant. It's a tougher hunt because the sheep come in and out of a refuge, and so it's a little bit tougher hunt. But they seem to kill a giant out of that thing every few years. You've got the White Sands Missile Range that holds 2 different hunts now. They had 1 hunt, and it's got 2 hunts now. Just because of crowding on that 1 hunt, they decided to split it, and so you've got 2 hunts on it. It's a very good hunt, for taking a 170 to 185 type sheep. Yeah, 170 to 180, 185 desert, which is a big sheep. The Hatchets has a couple of different hunts. I was down there with a friend of mine's wife 2 years ago, and we killed a 179 and change desert in the Hatchets. It's a good hunt with a chance to kill a 165 plus ram. And then you've got the good old trusty Palencios on the far western side of the state that borders Arizona, which was at one point in time for many years the only desert sheep unit in the entire state. It's always going to produce a 170, 180 plus ram. And then you've got right up there Ted Turner's place in Cristobal, and those units that are right there just outside of TRC.
Armaderis.
Yep, Armandaris. It's Ted Turner's place, and he gets a few tags that he auctions or sells off to people. But it's a good hunt. It's a good fun hunt. It's not as physical as some of the others. The sheep quality is probably not as good as some of the other units. It's still really good, but it's maybe not quite as good as some of the others. You're going to probably be looking at a 150 to 165 ram. They're going to kill a ram off there a little bigger every other year, every couple of years. But yeah, it's, the trophy quality is maybe just a touch less on that than it is some of the other units for sure. And then as far as Rockies, they're pretty much the northern, central to, center of the state to north. You got the Pecos, which they run 2 different hunts, which is a good hunt. There'll always be a 175 to 185 ram taken in there every few years. The Wheeler Peak is phenomenal. My uncle had that tag a couple of years ago, and he was 65, just got out of the hospital a couple of weeks before we were able to even get him up on that hunt, and wound up getting him a really nice 175 ram. That was really wishing we could have got him into some of the other country that we scouted. There was just no way to get him in there, but I saw a couple of sheep that were in that 183 to 186 range, just some phenomenal Rockies. Then Latier, which is a good unit. There's still about 170 to 180 plus sheep in Latier. Rio Grande Gorge is one of the newer units, some younger type rams, but gosh almighty, they've produced some giants out of that Rio Grande Gorge over the last few years, and I'm talking like 190 plus Rockies, which, when you start talking about that, you start thinking about Montana.
Yeah, for sure.
When you think about sheep in that class, but that Rio Grande Gorge it's been producing some giant sheep, and so there's one more unit that I'm not familiar with that much about, but it's still producing decent. It's obviously not one of your top producers, but it's still, obviously a good unit.
And Joseph, will you explain to the listeners as far as non-resident applying for sheep and the fact that New Mexico does not have a bonus point system? So truly, it's anybody's. Everybody has just as good a chance, correct? And walk the listeners through how the sheep works, and can they apply for desert and Rocky on the same permit, or do they have a separate draw for desert and a separate draw for Rocky?
Yeah, basically your Oryx, Ibex, everything got switched over, which used to, it was the Elk and Deer was a non-resident resident quota, and I guess it was about 3 years ago they switched it and made everything the resident non-resident quota. 84% of the tags go to the resident, 10% of the tags go to the outfitter pool, and then 6% go to non-resident unguided. And so for any of those species, you can, if somebody wanted to apply for those, is exactly what you were just saying. Every year, everybody's got the same shot. You could take a guy that's applied in New Mexico for 30 years, and you can take a guy that applies tomorrow that has never applied in New Mexico and draw a desert or a Rocky bighorn sheep the very first time he puts in. And so going with an outfitter, obviously you got a little bit better odds, almost double of what you would as going in non-resident unguided. And most people that's going to draw a tag like that once in a lifetime is going to want to go with somebody that knows the area, has got time to go scout it, look it over, find the biggest sheep they possibly can find in the unit, and go after them and pursue them. Whenever you're applying, a lot of times I just have guys go to my website. I've got a contract form on there. I just have them fill it out completely. They can scan it and email it to me. And I go in there, and if they've never applied in New Mexico, I just go in there and I build them an account. They're signing a waiver and a power of attorney, so I can act on their behalf and build them an account. And I go in there and I apply them for Oryx, Ibex, Rocky, Desert, and all that stuff. They've got their credit card info on that application. I charge their credit card, or I shouldn't say I charge. The Game and Fish charges their credit card the full amount. If they don't draw, I check the box if they want a refund on their hunting license, which they get their hunting license refunded back, and they get all of the money that they've put up except $13 per species that they will be charged as an application fee. I don't charge anything to do it. I provide that for my people that apply with me. I provide that as a free service to apply people in the draw. Whenever I apply for bighorn sheep, if they've never drawn a bighorn sheep tag in the state of New Mexico, I can apply them for both. And basically what happens is whenever I go into bighorn sheep, it's going to give me a choice of Rocky or Desert as my first. Okay, so let's just say I pick Desert as my first. Once I pick Desert, it's going to pull up all the units in the Desert, and it's going to allow me to pick 3 choices within those units. And I'm going to pick my first, second, and third choice for Desert. Then I'm going to click on another button, which is my second choice option, and that'll be Rocky. And then I go in there, and it's going to bring up all the different units within the Rocky, and I get 1, 2, 3. So basically, if you've never had a tag for bighorn sheep in the state of New Mexico, you've got 6 shots at drawing a bighorn sheep tag in the state of New Mexico, 3 for Desert and 3 for Rocky.
And is that chance of 3 for Desert and 3 for Rocky only available in the guided pool, or is that also the opportunity in the non-resident pool?
No, it's the same. It's the same guided non-resident. It's just there's a few more tags in the guided pool than there is in the non-guided non-resident pool. But they're still the same options. It's the same options for residents. And in our quota system, where 84% of the tags go to resident, we get the exact same options as the non-resident and the guided pool. It's all the same as far as how that's laid out. And basically the way the Game and Fish on all the applications, the way the New Mexico Department does is they issue you a random number. And that random number is scrambled just like a deck of cards. And you're just hoping that you're one of the top ones on that deck whenever that thing quits scrambling, because they're going to look at, let's just say they pull up your number. They're going to look at, and then I applied you for desert 1, 2, 3. And they're going to look at your desert and go, okay, that one's full, that one's full, that one's full. They're going to pull up the Rocky, which is your second choice. That one's full, that one's full, boom. You just drew a tag on your sixth, basically your sixth choice. You just drew a phenomenal tag because they look at all your options before they move on to the next thing, just like the Oryx. Let's just say I put you in for Rhodes Canyon Stallion. They're going to look at the Rhodes, it's full. They'll look at the second Rhodes hunt, it's full. Boom, the Stallion's got a tag, you're going to issue it, and it's still a phenomenal hunt. They look at all three choices before they move on to the next applicant.
And that's different from Arizona, where they look at only the first two choices. In New Mexico, they look at the first three.
That's correct.
Yes,
I mean, some people are drawing phenomenal tags on their third choice, and they're like, well, this must not be a very good tag. It was my third choice. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's still a good tag.
One question I would have for you is, let's say that there's somebody that's applying with an outfitter, let's say in western New Mexico, but they would like to apply for Ibex and Bighorn sheep and Oryx with you. Do you have any problem if someone applies with someone else for a certain species and with you, or is it they have to apply for every species with you in order to be in your guided draw?
No, I've got, I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he says, I've got 3 different outfitters in New Mexico, and I'm not quite sure why I do this or how this happened. He says, hopefully I'll get to come hunt with you, and we'll hook up, and you'll become my number one outfitter for everything. But, New Mexico is broken up of so many different species and so many different things. Us as outfitters, some of us have niches in our certain little areas. And so, I have guys call me all the time, hey, well, what about mule deer? I'm like, you know what? I can apply you in some other units up north where, that 2B, 2C, all them that, border around that Hickory Reservation where they're taking some really good bucks down there. But the thing about it is I'm not going to go up there and guide you. I'm going to refer you to another outfitter. And so I do that. Or I've got guys, like I was telling you, that he's got 3 different outfitters and he puts in for 3 different or 4 different things in New Mexico through 3 different outfitters. So I don't have a problem with that. I'm friends with several different outfitters, and we all work together. I'll send some guys that maybe I drew, or some guys that put in with me. Some of the guys that fill out a contract with me, but they like doing their own application. I'll visit with them about it, and they'll say, well, okay, well, I want to put in this, this, and this. I'm like, well, you got to understand that if you draw that third choice, that I'm not going to outfit you. I'm going to refer you to somebody that I know that's going to take care of you. And they're perfectly happy with that because they don't know that person. They don't know who it is, but they trust what I'm going to do with them.
Yeah, this is all great information. I actually pulled up the Graham's Guide Service hunt contract, and I'm looking at it here, and it's very well laid out with the limited power of attorney and what have you. And I could see how that's a great thing and service that you provide for your clients. One thing that I've noticed here that I did not ask about that I want to make sure that I cover is you also have the ability, I assume, in Unit 36 to have private land elk tags, where if someone did not want to rely on the draw, can they call you and get landowner tags and in essence, book a hunt immediately with you that if you have availability to hunt next year?
Yeah, what I've got going on, and I'm surprised that I didn't even hit on it or think about it, but I probably purchase at the moment somewhere between 25 and 30 what we call unit-wide landowner tags. I have been fortunate enough to be obviously living here my entire life and be friends and know the people that get these landowner tags, so I've got my hands on a pile of them. And what I do is I just have guys call me up and say, look, I want to come hunt with you next year. I got guys that hunted with me last year to say, I'm coming next year. What do I got to do? And so I basically just tell them, look, here's the deal. Send me $5,500 for a guaranteed landowner deposit. I'm going to put your name on it. We're going to put you in my calendar for what date do you want to come. So let's just say this guy says, I want to come on the second archery elk hunt, September 19th to the 24th. So I put his name in there. I put right beside his name that he has put down a $5,500 deposit. I still take him and I put him into the draw for that one. If he wants to come for that specific time frame, I'm going to put him in for that one hunt.
Sure.
If he draws it, then I'm going to sell his tag to somebody else, and basically his hunt's paid for.
So in other words,
but if he doesn't draw it, he's guaranteed to come.
But in other words, you're also giving him the ability to. It actually makes his hunt a little bit cheaper because he just drew the hunt, and you sell that landowner tag to someone else. But in essence, his hunt just became cheaper because he didn't have to buy that landowner voucher. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I'm just being the nice guy and not saying, okay, well, I've already got this guy in a guaranteed tag, so I'm not even going to put him into the draw. I'm going to put somebody else in. I mean, I'm trying to make it,
it would be easier for you if you just sold them and you're done with it. You didn't hassle with it. But what you're saying is, yeah, I get it.
That's correct, because I've got guys that say, well, I don't care which one I come on. I just want to come. And let's just say they want to come on a mature bull hunt, which is a muzzleloader or either rifle hunt. So they've sent me money and say, okay, well, I want to come on the muzzleloader, but put me in for muzzleloader rifle. And so I've got them on the calendar for the muzzleloader, but they may draw the second rifle hunt. So now I've got to move them to the second rifle hunt and try to fill their hunt. So I'm very flexible with what I do. And so basically, I mean, you can see there on my contract, I'm running a $5,500 for a one-on-one guided hunt plus tax. If you don't draw and you want to come on a guaranteed hunt, it's $10,500 plus tax.
Yeah, seems very reasonable. I really like the way you have this set up here. I also notice it has youth hunts, and I wanted to ask you, are the youth hunts just scream fests? When are those dates for the youth hunts?
Well, the youth hunts for New Mexico, oh my gosh, yeah. New Mexico has some of the best youth opportunities in all of the western side of the United States. There's an elk hunt in 34 where these kids are getting to hunt with a rifle. The same weekend we're hunting with a muzzleloader in 36. The bulls are screaming, and they're down there. It's basically a youth and a mobily impaired hunt in 34. And so they're basically out there with a rifle chasing bull elk, just screaming. My son had that tag years back, and it's just unbelievable. The Ibex Hunt. There's youth-only Ibex Hunts. There's a youth-only Oryx Hunt. The Oryx is youth and mobily impaired. There is a youth-only Desert Bighorn Sheep Hunt. There is a youth-only Rocky Mountain Bighorn Sheep Hunt. Some of the deer hunts are, they're giving the kids, let's just say, a week in November, and then they give them 2 weekends in December when they're starting to rut for mule deer and coos deer. And so, yeah, there's some units that is like, holy cow, I wish I was a kid again. Because they didn't have that when I was a kid.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think...
it's pretty phenomenal.
Do you think the elk hunting in 36 is better now than it was when you were a kid? Or what do you think?
I do, just because there's more elk. There's definitely more elk. There's no doubt about it in my mind. They've scattered, they've moved, and there's more of them. I still to this day don't see how we're able to do what we do as far as how many elk this unit is able to produce, but we keep doing it, and we're continuing to do it year after year after year. So obviously their models that they go by and their surveys when they fly is correct, because we seem to be doing it. I mean, we at Graham's Guide Service killed 36 bulls last year, and so it's amazing to me as the fact that we were able to do this year in and year out. One thing that I didn't mention is I've got a small piece of private ground for elk hunting that we take a few hunters on every year. It's already booked up for this year, but it's a pretty neat little ranch that's it's 5,000 acres. Some guy people that's big. For some places it's small, but it's a pretty unique and neat place to hunt elk on. And then we have a pretty neat antelope ranch that we acquired last year that we are working on with the landowner, obviously, to produce trophy quality type antelope. We killed an 88 6/8 inch goat off this place. It's 32,000 acres.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Well, Joseph, it's been great having you on the podcast. Really appreciate you bringing all the knowledge that you have on the Ibex and the Oryx and the elk and the sheep, and it's obvious that you love what you do, and it's great to hear another outfitter. I have a lot of great outfitters on this podcast, but it's great to hear an outfitter like yourself that's fired up, and we have a lot of good guests here, and you will be. I know the listeners are going to really enjoy this episode, so I just want to thank you for your passion and explaining how everything works in New Mexico and how you do things there at Graham Guide Service. I want to give you a chance to let the listeners know how they can get a hold of you, and also want to encourage them to the deadline is March 22nd, and they're going to need to get a hold of you right away and get this. They can go on your website and you can tell them how to do that, and also how to get a hold of you to apply for animals in New Mexico, and if they have any further follow-up questions, how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me and being long-winded, but as far as the deadline is fast approaching, we've got a week and a half. The quickest way is to just go to my website, which the quickest way I tell guys, I mean, it's basically grahamsguideservice.com, or just Google Graham's Guide Service. It's going to pop up.
And I just want to be clear, Joseph, I'm sorry, because I was pronouncing it wrong. It's Graham's, plural, GRAHAMS, guideservices.com.
Yep, you can even pull it up by grahamsguideservice.com. I own both domains.
Okay.
And so it'll come up either direction, or you can Google Graham's Guide Service, GRAHAMS, Graham's Guide Service. It'll pop up. On the homepage, you'll see price list, elk, ibex, oryx, bighorn sheep. All the way across the top there, you'll see a hunt contract form. If you click on that, you can download it. You can fill it in if you want, or you can download it, print it off, fill it in with a pen. Basically scan it and email it to me. My email is right there on the website. Email it to me, give me a shout, and let me know basically that you have sent one. As soon as I receive it, I will call you and I will visit with you, and I will go over, obviously on there you can mark your options, but I still want to call in and I visit with people and say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how I'm going to apply you, and make sure that the dates and seasons and everything fall into what they're wanting, and get them applied. It doesn't take me that long to take care of it. So it's very simple. The other way is to, obviously on my website, it's got both my numbers, but my cell phone, which is usually the best way to get a hold of me, which is 575-937-2099. My home number is 575-336-2799. And so either way, you can leave a message on either one of them, and I'll get back with you and get you put in.
That sounds great. Well,
and even those guys, I mean, to be honest with you, those guys that even want to apply themselves because they've done it for years, I just have them send me the contract. As long as I've got a contract on file and we both discuss what they're going to apply, then I give them my outfitter number and they can put in for themselves. So it's not something where a guy has to let me put them in. They can do it themselves. We just discuss what they're going to do with their application, and we move on from there.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Like I said, thanks for spending time with us, and God bless you, man, and I hope you have a great fall, and I'll be watching your progress, and just appreciate the vast amount of knowledge that you brought here to this episode on New Mexico, okay?
I appreciate it, and if you get the opportunity, keep your eyes peeled to Scent Blockers Most Wanted. I don't know if you know Larry Woodward and Bob Richardson with Scent Blockers Most Wanted, but I've been guiding Larry for 20 years. We've been doing TV shows for 20 years. We actually filmed, I think, five or six bulls that'll be airing and coming up on episodes that, if people or listeners want to see who we are or how we work, there's TV shows out there that I've been doing that they can actually see it happen.
That sounds fantastic, man. All right, take care.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.